You're on mute.
Are we live already?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Saraswati, we have another 4 minutes. Would you want to wait for that or you want to start?
Just another couple of more minutes. People are just logging in.
Yeah, 2 more minutes and then we
Yeah,
can,
yeah.
because in any case, the intro and others will go.
Good evening, Bhavani. Good evening,
Good evening,
Saraswati.
sir. Good evening.
Good evening, other participants,
Good evening.
resource persons.
Good evening, Mr. Ravi. Good evening.
We have 1 or 2 administrative requests. One is kindly post your questions in the chat box so that we are able to make efficient use of time, and those who are not speaking can be on video mute for better transmission. So we'll probably start in another minute to save time. So thanks for joining in.
I think we can start if all of you are ready. Ms. Pooja, I think it's okay. We can start. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. Welcome you all. This is Saraswati, as most of you know, Secretary General of the Madras Chamber. Welcome you all for this another interesting program under the WBC. Chairperson here, Ms. Bhavani, she had already made a request to all of you to keep your audio, video on mute when the panel discussion is on. We all know that Tamil Nadu is a very, very progressive state, not only in terms of the number of SMEs, industries, also most probably represented, women represented in industries. I think it's, I guess it's around 43% of the total all India range. That's something really amazing. And now with this policy in place, we are keen to see how much more can be done and what probably the Madras Chamber could also do a bit from our end. So I'll stop here, request Ms. Bhavani Balasubramanian, the chairperson of our Women Business Council, to say a few words, then pass on the thing to Ms. Arva. Thank you.
Good evening, friends. It's wonderful to have you all here. And thanks so much for being with us to make this discussion a grand success. On behalf of the Madras Chamber's President, Saraswati, my co-chair, Madhuri, and the Women's Business Council committee members, it gives me great pleasure to welcome Mrs. Pooja Kulkarni, IAS, CEO of Tamil Nadu Infrastructure Development Board, the Government of Tamil Nadu. Welcome, madam, and we are all honored to have you here for this discussion. And we are very happy to have Mrs. Sheetal Rajani, Regional HR Head, Tata Consultancy Services. Thank you so much for sparing your time during this office hour and being available with us to discuss this wonderful topic. And I'm really honored to have this panel coordinated by Arva Merchant, our enthusiastic committee member who is a partner of Kaitan & Co. As women achieve power, the barriers will fall. As society sees what women can do, there will be more women out there doing things that we'll all be better off for it, said Sandra Day O'Connor. The vision of the Tamil Nadu State Policy for Women says a safe, secure, healthy, aspirational, and enabling environment to empower women in the state. Various objectives like gender sensitive education, increasing women participation in the workforce, safe and women friendly workplaces, hand-holding women with startups, women-led micro enterprises, skill gap reduction amongst women in the industrial sector, capacity building, access to financial tools, and making them available for women. What a wonderful set of initiatives with an implementation plan in various pillars such as social, economic, political empowerment, and making sure that we focus on emotional and mental well-being. We at the WBC would like to contribute to the state policy and its implementation in a few aspects, which I'd like to touch upon before inviting Arva. With many legal professionals in our WBC, I'd like to say that we would like to contribute to the State Law Commission to facilitate a periodic review of legal and administrative reforms which they plan to address, and also try and see whether we can support the fast-tracking mechanism on cases related to gender-based violence. We would like to support the government and its agencies on the one-stop centers where women helplines are being made to provide legal assistance. We'd like to also support on aspects which are favorable to micro and small enterprises to help them solve their day-to-day issues, also help them strengthen the CBO training and capacity building for financial literacy, money management, bookkeeping, and preparation of business plan. We, the professionals here, would like to help the women startups by trying to form a counseling facility to help train them and sensitize the women entrepreneurs on their journey. In terms of propagation, we are interested in trying to propagate gender pay parity and try to help reduce discriminatory portrayal of women in all forms of media, and also make them aware of cyber crime inventions. Also, to the corporate sector, we'd like to propagate flexi timings, although the fact is that there is a mood on return to office. But yesterday, a public sector came out with flexi timings, and their scheme was wonderful. That shows a light at the end of the tunnel to see that women would have a better workplace to work in the future to come. For those who are joining this program, we at the Women's Business Council have been working on various women initiatives, holding panel discussions, and also inviting eminent personalities to have a connect session with our women. We celebrate the Women's Day annually with great pride on topics of interest. And we also have an encouraging session for men to make sure that those allies are also encouraged and be made part of our fold to spread women empowerment and women development. With these few words, I'm going to invite my coordinator, Arva. Arva is a partner of the dispute resolution and real estate practices in Ketan & Co. And she focuses on commercial and civil litigation and arbitration. She advises clients on real estate transactions and conducts due diligence during acquisitions. She appears before the Supreme Court of India, the High Court of Madras, the NCLAT, the NCLT, and the RERA. She has been part of an initiative of the firm which is called Arise, which deals with the rights of persons with disabilities and gender issues. And she was instrumental in creating a handbook on the rights of persons with disabilities in collaboration with a connected NGO. Who else is better to coordinate the session than our dear Arva? Over to you, Arva.
Thank you. Thank you so much, ma'am, and really appreciate the very kind words. So welcome, Pooja and Sheetal, and we are very excited to have you. Just a few words. Of course, neither of you need much introduction, but just a few words on your achievements and what you do. Pooja is of the 2003 batch of the Indian Administrative Services and is allotted to the Tamil Nadu cadre. She is also a qualified cost and works accountant. She is also currently holding the post of CEO of the Tamil Nadu Infrastructure Development Board. In her previous roles, she has served in various capacities with varied departments in the state like industries, finance, rural development, corporation, as well as education. She has also held the roles of MD and CEO of the Guidance Cell and the post of Commissioner with the Directorate of Geology and Mining. Sheetal is the Regional Human Resources Head in Chennai and Global Head for engagement with purpose with Tata Consultancy Services, manages the people processes for the largest branch of TCS with over 88,000 employees, associates. In addition, she heads the engagement with purpose function globally as well for TCS. Sheetal has experience of 22 years in HR functionals, and she is part of various initiatives like DEI, leadership development, talent analytics, talent engagement, as well as talent acquisition. She also holds a master's in business administration and specializes in systems and HR. A very warm welcome to both of you, and thank you so much for your very invaluable time. Pooja, congratulations on the policy. Some of the concepts which are introduced in the preamble itself are novel, and may I say also much needed in the current social and economic setup. And us as women, we definitely appreciate that. What I found most interesting was the linking of women empowerment with their sense of worth, their right of choice, and notably, of course, the recognition that women have the ability to bring on and influence social change. This is deeply heartening. We would love to hear a few words from you on the policy, the overall policy, followed by a few words from Sheetal as well on the policy before we move on to some questions that we have planned for you.
Thank you, Arva, and good afternoon to everybody. Ms. Bhavani, Ms. Madhuri, Chair and Co-Chair of the Business Council, and then old friends Subhashini and Saraswati, and all the participants. A very good afternoon to all of you. At the outset, let me just clarify one thing, that the champion of this policy is, of course, the Social Welfare Department. I have never worked there, and my limited role in this policy was to give some inputs when I was in the Industries Department. But of course, I mean, having worked across different sectors in the government, I can always share what is the intent behind the policy and how is it that government would go about in implementing the policy. The policy, as you can see, is quite ambitious in its scope, in its coverage, and and the objectives that it intends to achieve. And undoubtedly, there is a lot of effort that government needs to take, not just with external stakeholders, but within government itself. The scope of the policy is all encompassing. Those of you who've had an opportunity to go through the policy, you can see it covers aspects from the literally from the birth to deathline, you can say cradle to grave, and everything that's contained in between. So we're talking about the health of the girl child, we're talking about education, we're talking about the mental well-being, we're talking about adolescence, we're talking about growing up, college, opportunities, higher education, employment, self-employment, enterprising. Then we're looking at geriatric care, we're looking at support for destitute women, we're looking at challenges that women face, particularly in difficult circumstances, natural calamities, hospitalization, and the like. And we're looking at geriatric care. So it's really all encompassing, and the work that government itself has in in front of itself is quite challenging for all the government departments to come together and achieve each of the objectives that are within its sphere. So the policy itself, like I said, it's I can say the objectives are predominantly two-pronged. One is the personal well-being itself of women, the development of women on one side, and through that we are looking at of course the overall growth of the state. So we are now at a stage where the state, of course, as most of you may be knowing, we are the second largest economy in the country, and if we were a country by ourselves, we would probably rank in the top 50 economies of the world. So that's where we stand, and we are at a stage where we really need to take the next big leap forward. incremental growth is just no longer sufficient for us to achieve our own aspirations. We have a young population. We have a population that is significantly into higher education, and then that population has got its own aspirations. So we are really looking at trying to fulfill those aspirations, and to fulfill those aspirations, we're looking at a lot of growth, and that next leap of growth will really come from a significantly higher level of participation from women in the growth plans of the state itself. So this growth needs to come from the well-being of women in the first place. So if we are looking at women participating in far greater numbers in the economic development of the state, it cannot happen without women being first healthy, and second, being equipped with the skills that they need to participate in that. We of course have already a number of programs. Tamil Nadu has been a pioneering state on the social welfare side. So we have a number of pioneering programs, of course, the latest being the KMUT, in which the government transfers 1,000 rupees every month to women folk below us, who are vulnerable women coming from the vulnerable sections of society, and below a certain income limit, and satisfying a number of other conditions. It's in part a recognition of the unpaid work that these women also perform, which in itself is a significant, it's an acceptance of a broader global principle. We have, of course, been providing free bus travel to women for a very long time, and you can see that this program has now been adopted in many other states. It's something that has far greater externalities. It's not just a question of free travel. It's what gives women agency over their mobility, and mobility is so crucial to participating in economic development itself. And these are things that many people don't understand, and I think it's important for us to speak about these programs on fora such as these. It's not just about giving something free. The giving free has got far greater implications, and what it achieves is significantly beyond beyond what we actually spend, or for government it's a notional loss of revenue, but what is really achieved is far greater than that. I think Bhavani, or I can't remember if it was Saraswati who mentioned, we are in terms of participation of women in the labor force itself, we are I think rural, we are somewhere around 35%. Urban, unfortunately, we are actually lower. Although both rural and urban, we are much above the national average, but rural we are at about 35%, urban we are somewhere around 23 to 25%, and that's where we need to jump. On a national level, nearly half of the women in factories who work in factories are in Tamil Nadu, which is a big factor. But still, in terms of absolute numbers, it's still not where we would like to be. And therefore, in terms of policies, you can see that the policy also looks to address some of the challenges that women face in employment that they seek, or in enterprises that they would like to develop. So the policy really looks to address all of these. The industries that we have looked to promote in the last few years, they are also in line with the policy. So the kind of industries that we have really made major efforts to promote are the types that will bring women from informal employment to formal employment. The electronics manufacturing industry, the non-leather footwear industry. These are some of the examples. Non-leather footwear particularly, it's unique in the sense that that's one sector which does not really prefer to be in urban areas. their preference is to be in rural areas, and that is something that that suits us to a T. The kind of feedback that we've received from these investors is that the women employees here are far better at picking up skills, so they're very happy. And we set up one unit, and that one unit ends up employing 10,000, 15,000 women. So we are looking at 15,000 families, and the well-being of those 15,000 families, it's a generational shift. Um, uh, the investors, they take care of their employees, they provide fairly good facilities. So we are also bringing in international investors into our rural hinterland and giving them that exposure. It is not just about giving employment to one woman, right? It is about her family and the exposure that they get to an international working experience. So that's what we are bringing to our rural areas. And of course, it formalizes, it takes away women from agriculture, which houses a lot of disguised unemployment, takes them away from the agriculture sector to formal employment. And along with that, along with formal employment, as you all know, come all the attendant benefits of social security and health and all of that. So all these benefits that come about, a lot of it we are also talking about in the policy, not just for those in formal employment, but for women across the state. We are talking about social security, we are talking about insurance of all kinds. So all of these factors, they cannot work in isolation. While bringing them into formal employment makes things easier for us to take forward those policies, our challenge, of course, is that we are looking at half the population which needs to be addressed, and out of that probably half of that, so about 25% rural, that is the population that we need to address first. And then there are, you can say, another 10% in the urban areas, vulnerable women in the women from vulnerable families in the urban areas who need to be addressed. So we're looking at a far larger population, and that is what the policy sets out to achieve. I think I think for opening remarks, I think that's good on the plate.
No, that was brilliant. That was brilliant. So what we do here is that the policy is well thought, it is well researched. The government has clearly done its homework in terms of understanding what are the practical challenges that a woman faces, like you said, very rightly said, right from the birth, right from the cradle till till her last days. Very, very interesting concepts, and we'll discuss more about implementation because, like you said, the policies are ambitious as well. But we will have a lot of work in front of us, and hope there will be a lot of collaboration, and we'll speak about it. For now, if Sheetal, you could share some of your views from your perspective from the private sector on what you see are the potentials in the policy and overall views on the policy. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, and a warm good evening to everyone present here, and the participants as well. I think this is an important topic which needs to be definitely addressed. And I echo a lot of thoughts which Pooja had just mentioned. To put things in perspective, one, I think in today's context, a kind of policy like this, which is very progressive and audacious, like the way Pooja has mentioned, is not just something good to have, but it becomes an economic imperative. While Pooja had alluded in terms of the kind of labor workforce participation we have, but let me put things in perspective in terms of why it is not just a good thing to have, but it becomes an economic perspective and a business perspective and imperative as well. We did talk about increasing our labor workforce participation, but the fundamental problem is it's not about women not working, but it is about the quantum of unpaid to paid hours. There were a lot of research which definitely says that women spend 7.2 hours on unpaid domestic work compared to 2.8 hours spent by men on unpaid work. Now, why this becomes very significant? Like, again, going back to what Pooja mentioned, in a country where 49% of 1.3 and odd billion don't have work accountant, that is significant value in terms of GDP. So if you have to quantify these numbers in terms of unpaid work, it is actually amounting to 22.7 lakh crores, which is 7.2% of GDP. So this is what is a critical loss for a nation and for the economy and for businesses as well, in terms of ensuring that there is more labor workforce participation by women. We reduce the unpaid hours, and then we look at monetizing that every hour which a woman spends. So I think the philosophy is very, very simple. You empower a woman, it is a family which is empowered. And if you empower a family, it's community and the nation at large. I think that that's why I feel that the Tamil Nadu State Policy for women is very important. And it is very, very persistent in terms of addressing the gender disparities that do occur, and because of the social and a very important aspect in terms of social and economic progress as well, particularly post-COVID and post-pandemic. Like Pavani had mentioned, that yes, we are moving into work from office and business as usual. But the reality of the fact is that post-COVID, there has been disproportionate effect on women in terms of job losses and increased domestic responsibilities, the unpaid hours, which I did mention. And it is very, very important that we have policies that specifically address women's need and rights as essential factors. So, in an era where gender equality is increasingly recognized as a fundamental component of sustainable development, empowering women holistically, like the way the policy addresses through education, economic opportunities, and robust legal protections, is not only good to have a matter of justice, but a strategic imperative for societal growth as well. What the policy does is a very, very important step towards dismantling systemic barriers in terms of fostering inclusive development and ensuring that women, who are a critical part of the workforce, can contribute to and benefit from the state's progress as well. Like Pooja had mentioned, it is the second most important state which in terms of growth and in terms of contribution to the GDP. I think it's important that we have this particular aspect. Alluding to the salient features of the policy, I think Pooja has mentioned a whole lot of aspects of it. But what it really brings is fundamentally a lot of economic empowerment through its skill development programs, especially at enhancing skills among women in rural areas, importantly, so that there is an increased employability and entrepreneurship skills as well. Second important thing is in terms of financial inclusion, there are policies to ensure women have access to banking services, microfinance, and credit facilities to start and grow their businesses. And this is particularly important for that entrepreneurship spirit as well. And more importantly, equal pay initiatives. Enforcement of equal pay of equal work across sectors is something which definitely this policy addresses. Fundamental aspect of this is in terms of the quality and access to education. We know it is very, very disparate in terms of access to quality education. So this policy addresses universal education, like ensuring free and compulsory education, scholarships and incentives, and particularly from an industry which I belong to, the STEM focus, in terms of encouraging women to enter STEM, which is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics fields through targeted programs and incentives. Believe me, I think as an organization, we believe that only the digital inclusion will truly arrest these gender pay gaps which exist at workforce today. An important aspect is the holistic health and well-being, which the policy also addresses. Uh, from birth to death, very nicely put as well, in terms of the reproductive health services, the mental health support, the nutrition programs. I think the policy addresses the entire holistic health and well-being as well. Importantly, it also addresses the safety and security aspects in terms of addressing legal frameworks. It has strengthening laws and enforcement mechanisms to protect women from domestic violence, sexual harassment, and other forms of gender based violence. It has the helplines and support centers and public safety measures as well, in terms of improving safety in public spaces through better lighting, surveillance, and police patrolling as well. And more importantly, to create that role models in the political and social inclusion as well, in terms of representation and governance, awareness campaigns, and support for the marginalized groups, particularly from people from underprivileged sections of the society and economically disadvantaged groups. I think there is a systemic intervention from a policy perspective. Now, why all this becomes important? more as I mentioned, first is the economic imperative. Second is in terms of promoting gender equality as well. It does ensure to bridge the gender gap in various spheres, ensuring women have equal opportunities and rights in terms of both letter and spirit. It addresses systemic barriers that hinders women's participation in economic, social, and political life. So it is very progressive and holistic in terms of approach from that point of view. It enhances the economic growth because it gives them the aid in terms of substantial economic growth, and so that women can contribute more actively to economy and entrepreneurship and employment among women, so that women is empowered. It can improve the standard of living of families and communities at large. The focus on health and education will ensure that the participation is not intermittent and sporadic, but it is continuous and seamless. Educated and healthy women are better positioned to contribute positively to the communities and economy. And lastly, it strengthens the social fabric. Ensuring safety and security for women, it promotes a more equitable and inclusive, peaceful society. It does look at inclusion and representation of women in governance and decision making processes, leading to more balanced and effective policies. Today, we know by design it's a man's world by default, but by having more women at places where decisions can be influenced, it will lead to more balanced and effective policies as well. So, from systemic interventions, definitely things have been addressed. But from an implementation point of view, what becomes very, very important is for organizations and individuals to be also part of the policy in letter and spirit. Now, from an organization perspective, we have a huge role to play in terms of aligning in terms of the ambitious vision which we have in terms of the policy, to ensure that we wear this lens across all our policies as well, particularly the DEI policies and the CSR policies. And there is a better governance in terms of compliance and reporting as well. Now, for individuals, I think we have things laid up now for us. It will open up more opportunities to contribute both to the economy in terms of corporate or as entrepreneurs. We will have greater access to education. We'll have access to employment opportunities, leading to both personal and professional growth. There is more enhanced safety and support as well, and empowerment and representation as well. Now, from an organization point of view, I think when the policy is definitely there in place, we do see that there is, despite a growing focus on women's leadership development, there is a significant gap still in the role models, which I just mentioned, in terms of representation of women in the highest levels across private and public sectors. Particularly in our industry, we see that where when at the joining we do have an almost 50-50 in terms of joining, but as we move across the layers of leadership, I think the representation of women definitely reduces. This underrepresentation is not a pipeline issue, it's actually an equity issue. While there are systemic interventions as well, there are a lot of societal expectations and unconscious biases which we may have to rise up to the occasion to address as organizations and individuals. So we do see that women increasingly drop out or opt out due to systems of workplace inequity. Organizations must stand up and address the hidden gaps and assess the factors which are impeding the advancement of women, especially in the leadership layers as well. One thing is to ensure, look at wearing a very inclusive lens in terms of ensuring that our job descriptions are inclusive. We do see that women are often evaluated.
Sorry,
Sheetal, we lost you.
we'll just wait for Sheetal to connect. There may be some technical glitch. Uh, shall we proceed, ma'am?
Yeah, we can proceed.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So, ma'am, what I hear from both of you is that the policy takes care of several issues at various levels. It is ambitious. But personally, what I also feel as being a lawyer, you sometimes delve into the territory of idealism. So what I also feel that the policy is a source of inspiration for several of the other states, several of the other parts of the world, in fact. and nobody can deny that women form a very large part of the working force, whether it is organized or it is an informal sector, and the policy is is at least hoping to achieve and bridge these gaps. You spoke about implementation, ma'am, and the stakeholders, and we see that the policy covers very wide range of very many aspects that you mentioned: institutional financial tools, digital literacy, gender sensitization, etc., etc. One key factor which I noticed in the policy in terms of implementation was the involvement of various stakeholders. Stakeholders, which are government organizations, uh, organized bodies, government bodies, which are going to work on the grassroots level, as well as the higher management or the policy making decision level. So one crucial point and one crucial factor is going to be the operational synergy between these stakeholders. And I think the policy also briefly discusses it. But we would love to hear from you, in your view, what is going to be the roadmap for this to achieve this, operational synergies for a meaningful implementation of the policy?
Yeah. See, all of government now is certainly not working just through governmental agencies. There's a significant role, a major contribution from our partner organizations, the non-governmental organizations who partner us in our implementation. I mean, certainly in government, we are under no illusion that we house all the wisdom or that we are capable of rolling out every possible scheme completely on our own. Of course, there are certain issues or certain aspects where clearly government and its own employees and its manpower is far better placed. But then there are so many other aspects, so many other programs and interventions that we would like to deliver, which can only be done with the help of partners, especially on the social side. We're talking about healthcare, we're talking about education, we're talking about advocacy itself. Yeah, we're talking about advocacy. And for all of these, what in government we have are organizations whose role it is to engage with partners. So if we're talking about skilling, it's not as if government is doing the skilling on its own. So whether it is our skill development corporation or whether it is the corporation for the development of women, in short, we just call it the Women Development Corporation. They empanel training partners, a large number of agencies which actually impart training. So it's not as if the Skill Development Corporation, the Women Development Corporation is actually conducting the training or the skilling on its own. There is no way we can house so much of expertise in ourselves. So there's a lot of partnership that's going on, and it's successfully going on. If you take education, for example, we are talking about gender sensitization or making our textbooks themselves carry the right messages. So the right kind of images. We've all grown up in a period when our textbooks would typically show a woman as a teacher and a nurse and the man as a cop or a doctor. So these are small things which really reinforce all the biases and prejudices. So here again, we are engaging with a number of partners to see what all we need to change in our textbooks themselves, in our readers, the images that we carry, the stories that we carry, and all of this again is being done with partners. If we are looking at healthcare, we have, of course, the Anganwadi workers and the Ashas. But for, again, the manpower that is required to reach out to such a large number of women, it's not sufficient with just the government employees. So we are in fact engaging a lot with the self-help groups. So this is where you see a convergence between, say, a Women Development Corporation and the health department. All the self-help group members who then there are the panchayat level federations, the block level federations, and amongst them we have the leaders, we have the community resource persons who are best placed to take the message across, because they stay there, they reside, they stay in the villages, they're always engaging with the other women folk who stay there. And this kind of an engagement and this kind of networking is what is really taking the message across. There's, I mean, like I said, certainly there is no way government can do it on its own without the support of partners. Even if you're talking about skilling, so it is not just imparting of skill training either through the skill development corporation or the women development corporation, but we're talking about a program where we are enlisting the support of industry for internships, and that was something that we did a lot in my previous role in guidance. The industries department has its connect with all the chambers of commerce, all the industry associations, all the federations, NASCOM, CII, MCCI, and the like, ASSOCHAM, and everybody. And then so we are connecting with industry. We are constantly reaching out to industry to take on our graduates who are still, while they're still studying, to give them those summer internships, to take them on internship programs as soon as they graduate, preferably while they are still in college, so that they are employment ready. I mean, we constantly hear this refrain that we have graduates who are unemployable. So that issue needs to be addressed, and it is not possible for us to address it entirely on our own, because government is always playing catch up with technology. Industry, the pace at which technology moves in industry is phenomenal, and there's always a lag between where industry is, where academia is, and then where government is. So there is no way we can, always try to play that catch-up game. There has to come a time when we move at par, and the only way we can do that is when all three, that is industry, academia, and government, are in sync. And that is something that we've been able to do with some, I can say, some degree of success through the Nan Mudal One program. So we have industry which is running their own courses in institutions of higher education, both engineering and arts and science institutions. And our students are getting trained in soft skills. They're getting trained on skills which industry requires. So this is where we are partnering with stakeholders across board to achieve these kind of objectives.
Right. So I hear it as, it makes a lot of sense. Hear it as so it's going to be a function of participation, awareness, and collaboration between the private and the public sectors, and hopefully, and I'm sure the benefit will seep down to the benefactors who are the target of the policy. And so Sheetal, from your perspective, speaking of stakeholders, do you see the role of the private sector that it can play in helping the government achieve its objectives, and how effective do you think it is going to be in the near future?
So I think organizations have a very important role to play in terms of ensuring that the implementation of the policy is in the letter and spirit, in the way it's articulated, and it meets its objectives as well. From an organization point of view, I think we need to ensure that we're very intentional about that policy aspect itself, in terms of all our, in terms of ensuring that our workforce participation is, is increasing. So the entire community outreach programs which we have, the affirmative action programs which we have, should be intentional about hiring diversity and creating diversity in our workforce as well. Having said that, in terms of the representation, we need to ensure that there are very policy and process aspects as well need to be addressed. So the flexibility policy, the leave policy and other things as well need to be really addressed, to ensure that every milestones we look at how do we support and empower a diverse workforce as well. At TCS, I think we do see that most of our policies are gender agnostic. In one way, the way to address this problem about stereotypes is to ensure that the policies are gender agnostic, particularly in the primary caregiving responsibility. So if it is a leave for childcare, it is applicable for both men and women. Of course, for women, it helps in terms of being in India and in many major parts of the world, we are the primary caregivers. But it does help break stereotypes that it is okay for either men or women to step up into the role of primary caregiving. So that entire system in terms of a policy and processes need to be progressive to ensure that it is the adoption is at the last mile. Importantly, we also need to create that networks. Okay. that entire system of a community to reach out to. So we do have a whole set of ERGs, which we call employee resource groups. So there is this community which you can use to lean in and to have a sounding board as well. So if I've gone through this experience for my tribe, can I stand up and say, hey, I've gone through this, and this is something which has worked for me as well. So that entire community, where it is a safe space to sound out any concerns, policies, or even give feedback to the decision maker in the organization for a policy level change to be implemented, that's something which we can definitely look at. And lastly and most importantly, that allies, advocacy, and sponsorship, I think that is something which will really trigger in terms of empowering and increasing women, especially in the leadership positions. And we create those role models as well who walk the talk as well.
Right, right. No, this is very interesting. And what you mentioned about network, it I think it resonates with almost everybody present here, because almost everybody present here would need that support, be at home, be at your workplace, be at, why not a why not a mother, pursuing a higher education. On all levels, that support is much appreciated. So Pooja, both of you, spoke about the policy focusing on education and research, and the various measures that the state is going to look at and is considering to take. One of such measures we heard is skilling. So here we are looking at development of skill, we are looking at upskilling, we are looking at reskilling. The policy looks at enabling women to pursue, lateral entry, re-entry into the work stream. Working mothers, for example, after a long break, short break, whatever it may be, rejoining the workforce, they would need, from experience, they need support at various levels. So what are these particular skills that the policy is particularly referring to, and what are the projects which are going to be rolled out to impart these skills? This is very important from a practical standpoint for almost everybody present.
Yeah, so skilling is something that we have multiple organizations taking up, addressing different segments of the population. So we have the Skill Development Corporation, which is looking at skilling the youth. We have the Women Development Corporation, which is looking at skilling. You can say the middle age segment, and in different sectors again. So the Skill Development Corporation is really looking, like I said, it's targeting the youth. So the skills that we are looking at there are new age skills. We are training our youth in, of course, electronics, in AI and programming. But then we are also looking at logistics. We are looking at hospitality. We're looking at management. We're looking at healthcare. So skills for which there is a demand. This is this is the focus of the Skill Development Corporation. If you take the median age of the state, we are already above the national average. The national average is somewhere around 27, 28. Tamil Nadu, because of the growth trajectory that we've seen and the social development that we've seen, our birth rate has already dipped below replacement level. So our median age, we are already 34, right? So we have a young population right now, and therefore we need to reap that dividend right now. This decade, the next decade, these are our most critical decades. After that, we would also start facing the same challenges that developed countries face, right? We will have a slightly aging population and all of those. So our focus is to look at skills, imparting skills which are in demand right now. And what I already mentioned, so the Skill Development Corporation has already brought in a number of partners who are exclusively into imparting skills. The skills are imparted on the National Skill Qualification Framework, so everybody gets a certificate that is recognized. And then we have industry partners who are imparting skills to students while they're in college, also running internships for them as soon as they graduate. So industry also saves a lot on the time that is lost. So typically we see students getting recruited and then going through like a 6 months to a 1 year training again with the industry, which is really it's a loss of economic resources, it's a loss of time and effort for everybody around, right? So that's the target. So we already have a lot of partners on board, manufacturing, from the manufacturing industry side, from the service industry side. And so therefore the skills that we are targeting there are the new age skills. We're looking at soft skills. We find our students struggle with expression, with presentation, with interaction, with confidence, and the language skills. Right. So all of these. So we're running all these courses also for students in college. Um, uh, uh, we're also trying to look at mentorship. So this is where I call upon industry to participate more and take on more and more students for the mentorship and internship programs, so that it's in everybody's interest. It's in your interest. You will have graduates who are far more readily employable than you, again struggling to train them after you've recruited them, right? So it's in everybody's interest, and that is what I call upon. One of the things that you mentioned, Arva, was I think Sheetal also mentioned the impact that COVID has had. And women who had to really take on a significantly higher burden, because then everybody was at home, and the women were working and taking care of the kids and everything else also. Many women actually fell out of the workforce because they just could not cope up with that kind of demand. And then, of course, you have women post childbirth also losing out. Interestingly, one of the things that the Skill Development Corporation has actually taken up is to give guidance, counseling guidance for women with a career break. It could be post maternity, post COVID, whatever. And in the last 1 year or so, across the state, they've actually taken up this counseling for about I think more than 15,000 women, mostly from the smaller towns who have taken a break and are now looking to rejoin the workforce, and the towns and the tier 2 cities. So these are some of the initiatives that the Skill Development Corporation has taken. The Women Development Corporation, on the other hand, looks at the rural areas, the farm, as well as the non-farm sector. In the farm sector, we are looking, they're looking at forming the producer groups, their collectives, and there's a lot of credit flow that goes in there. And they're also promoting these micro enterprises on farm-based products. Last year, I think they promoted something more than 1,000 such micro enterprises. So from the Women Development Corporation, the kind of skilling that they impart to the rural women is on coming up with ideas, is on developing project reports, simple project reports, which will get them the credit from formal credit. Then marketing support, so training them in marketing, giving them that networking support, training them in packaging, labeling, all of that, so that products can be sold through the regular formal retailing channels. So there's a lot of marketing training and support that comes from the Women Development Corporation. So we have two government agencies which are looking at different segments with different objectives, and things are going on over there. So this is what government is primarily doing just now.
This is absolutely fantastic, and I think one very critical skill that you mentioned is soft skills. That is usually, sometimes missing from our typical educational system. But increasingly, we do see private schools, public schools focusing on development of soft skills. And I think these soft skills are particularly important for women because of the social setup, the way women are brought up, the way, like you mentioned, it's the men's world, and how soft skills like confidence, ambition, it comes so naturally to a man. But when a woman is she struggles a bit to appear confident and be confident, in fact, and ambitious. And of course, that's a discussion for another day altogether. But truly, I mean, the policy is, of course, ambitious, but I think it has a lot of foresight as well, and a deeper foresight. It is certainly not superfluous on any level. So that's amazing to know. So just one question for Pooja again, that from your position of importance, do you think that this policy addresses your concerns? We have spoken about objectives, we spoke about implementation, we spoke about future plans for the implementation in the private sector and the public sector, what the government is planning to do. But from your position in HR, I'm sure there are quite a few concerns that you face for women. So in your role, do you think that the policy addresses the concerns that you see in your experience?
I guess it's for me.
Yes, Sheetal, sorry.
Yeah. So, see, while the systemic intervention and policy intervention is definitely addressed by, from this particular policy as well. But one important thing, which I think was brought in a little bit earlier as well, is in terms of the societal expectations, the deep-rooted unconscious biases and the societal expectations that still exist of women. I think we need to really, really importantly make that change in that narrative. So that change needs to, also start at individual levels, at home, at schools, at colleges, at institutions, through the systemic interventions, and then at the organizations. Today, a whole lot of burden is brought at the organizations to address this suddenly in terms of that. So triggering back, I think, from individuals, if the way women are portrayed in media, in advertisements, in the way textbooks, like we just mentioned, what are the role models which we have? I think that entire narrative needs to be changed to become more balanced. I think that's an important aspect which needs to be addressed. Two is, even in schools and colleges, while today's generation is more open and more inclusive, but somewhere down the line, I think it needs to be deeply ingrained in them that that entire tolerance and that inclusion needs to also begin at that grassroots level as well. And third, then we have the policy intervention, which is already there in terms of those sections of the society which we need to move the needle, do it through the systemic interventions, and lastly, create that entire community framework where we can stand up as a tribe, ensure that we support each other, and we kind of help each other in this particular journey as well. So I will say partly it's addressed by the policy. It will go a long way in terms of that, but there is the whole circle which also needs to be addressed in terms of communities, in terms of individuals, in terms of our academic institutions, the way they address that. I think all this needs to work together in tandem to ensure we bring holistic change.
Right. That's very helpful to know. A few questions, I think, very, very interesting answers, and it has been a very invigorating, discussion on various aspects of the policy. Just very last question, ma'am, to Pooja. Digital literacy is the need of the hour, and digital literacy clubbed with the financial inclusion through community-based organization is something which is going to be the game changer. Now, the policy discusses and talks about it, and I'm sure the government has certain, specific pilot programs in mind to implement this. But do you plan to? And this might be picking the nitty-gritties at it, this question. But apologies for that. But I cannot resist but ask that: are there any programs which have already seen some reasonable success, which you plan to implement for women in particular in this digital literacy space and financial inclusion?
So the good news is that from our surveys, we see that 92% of women already have some kind of a savings account. So it could be with a bank, it could be with the post office, it could be with the cooperative society, it could simply be with the local packs, so they have some kind of an account. That's the good news. The other good news is that probably more than 70% of women own a mobile phone and they use. So these are two very, very big enabling factors. The next part comes is how do you leverage these two factors and get women to participate more in terms of how they use their account, how they use their mobile phones, and how do we as government ensure that more and more women come within the formal financial sector and they're able to access formal credit and all the other formal financial instruments, right? So this is again something that the Women Development Corporation takes up both in the urban as well as the rural areas. Of course, the youth it's not a struggle anymore because they have access. That's the kind of training that's already been given in our schools and colleges, so they're already exposed to that. We're really looking at rural women. We're looking at vulnerable women in the urban areas who haven't had that opportunity and that kind of an exposure. So it's again the role of the Women Development Corporation. That task is something that they've already started. They run a program called the Rural Transformation Project, and digital literacy, financial literacy are two key pillars of that program. There is financial inclusion. They have community based resource persons. There are I think they have more than 5,000 of them, trained community based resource persons who are from the panchayat federations and the block federations. They then train the local women on financial planning. How do you save, where do you save, when do you save, starting from very basic aspects such as these, and then to go on to how do you access formal credit, whether it is from the cooperative institutions or whether it is from the formal banking institutions. It doesn't stop there. Now, in fact, the women development, one of the really good initiatives which I can say is that has been taken is through their network. There are something like I would say about 5 lakh active self-help groups right now. So we are talking about each group has on an average, you can say an average of 10 members. So we are looking at something like 50 lakh women. So that's a huge section that we are targeting. All of them, the corporation now mandates that all the SHG members, they take on the government insurance programs, all of which are heavily subsidized. So there's really no expenditure for the women. So we're talking about life insurance, we're talking about health insurance, we're talking about pension programs, we're talking about the Chief Minister's health insurance program, the Atal Bima Yojana, and all of those. So the community-based resource persons ensure that these women become members in all of these programs, and government, of course, makes a number of payments on their behalf. The women are also encouraged to make their contributions through their accounts. There's a lot of training that the women get on how to make loan applications and all of that. Over the last couple of years, I think they've trained something like 15 lakh women. Then there's the bank linkage program, which covers almost all the self-help groups in the state. This figure may sound astounding, but that's the level. There is something like the credit assistance that is given to all of these women is actually of the order of 30,000 crores. That's the kind of linkage. Yeah, it's not one time, it's repeat, right? So they repay, it builds in that habit of borrowing and repaying. So that's the level that's the quantum that we're talking about.
That's indeed astounding.
Yes,
that is indeed astounding.
There are banking correspondents now in almost every panchayat.
Right.
So these banking correspondents, they're called Sakhis. They help women access their accounts so that women don't have to travel all the way to the bank and lose a day's wages. So we have these are the initiatives which have leveraged the presence of women themselves in the rural areas, which have trained women in the rural areas to become facilitators and motivators for other women folk. These banking correspondents, the local resource persons, they multitask, right? It's both digital literacy, financial literacy, as well as training them on their collectives, their loan applications. All of those are facilitated by these resource persons. So that's something that government is already doing on a fairly large scale in the rural areas.
Yes. And we have covered like a wide range of topics, objectives, implementation, etc. And I think we have slightly overrun the time also in our enthusiasm. So we may not have much time for all the Q&As, ma'am, but Bhavani ma'am, I think we can possibly pick up a question from the chat box. And I think one recurring question was with respect to what the policy aims to achieve for women who are in the senior citizen category. I think, and we have not spoken about it. So if there are any insights on that from either of you, they're most welcome.
For the women who are already, I mean, I'm not even talking about senior citizen. I'm talking about women who are vulnerable, either destitute or they need support. The
Right.
moment they cross the age of 45, there are pension programs.
Okay.
That is there. The policy also looks at healthcare and then geriatric care. We are also looking at seeing how we can bring in the private sector to run senior living accommodation.
Yes.
They're of course there in the private sector, but then clearly they cater to the well-heeled, whereas the requirement is there for those from the middle classes, from the lower middle classes. So
there's an existing policy for that as well.
Yes.
So it ties up well with the new policy.
So we're looking at bringing in private sector participation to see how we can address the challenge of senior living and healthcare within that itself. Healthcare for senior citizens, again, it is through the existing networks, in the rural areas through the ashas and the anganwadis and the regular healthcare networks. Also, all the resource persons from the self-help group network of the Women Development Corporation. So that network is already there. But this kind of support, then the social welfare department also brings in, engages with organizations to tap into counselors to look at women who need that kind of support. They're running helplines. So all of these are there. But really, like I said, the crucial thing is healthcare support and then senior living facilities. The senior living facilities I mentioned, we are looking at seeing, how we can bring in the private sector also to do that.
Right, right.
I'd just like to add one point that Tamil Nadu features the first among the top cities for women who work. And that is followed by Salem, Erode, Tirupur, which come in category 2. So, Pooja ma'am, you should be proud that the state is already at a very well developed state as far as women are concerned.
Out of the top 10 cities, 5 are in Tamil Nadu. So that's
phenomenal.
Yes.
That is phenomenal. That is some achievement. Thank you so much. It has been a pleasure.
Madhuri, we'd like you to give the vote of thanks.
Thank you. That was one power-packed session that we had. We had a lot of insights and a lot of ideas on what the government is actually doing it. Instantly when I was thinking about the state policy for women and what was the policy, India's first policy was formulated somewhere in 2001. And that was a year when they declared it is this as a year of women's empowerment, Swashakti. But if you look at the World Economic Forum itself, which was a country which tops in terms of women's performance, it's Iceland. Because it's a very small country with lesser women, they were able to achieve it easier. But the yardstick that was given in that World Economic Forum is, to understand that they have to focus on education, skilling, and microfinance. And the yardsticks also were education, health, and political leadership. I think the current state policy of Tamil Nadu focuses on all these things, and we are already on that pathway. As women, as entrepreneurs, as professionals, as skilling, what we have to do is we have to know all this that are actually available for us and just grab it to know better. It is on behalf of my chairperson, Ms. Bhavani Balasubramaniam, on behalf of all the WBC members, and on my own behalf. It is. I profoundly thank the panelists here, Ms. Pooja Kulkarni and Ms. Sheetal, for immediately accepting this, for this program, because we really wanted a person from the government's perspective for them, and you have given very deep insight in terms of understanding, giving us on the background of the policy, the implementation of the policy, and how you are going from the grassroots level, like from village, block, tehsil, and going on to the top, and in ensuring the importance of skilling and financial awareness of all those things. And Ms. Sheetal, it was nice to hear I mean, it was not nice. I'm not saying it was nice to hear. It's to understand that, how much of unpaid hours of work that are going by the men and the women, how much we have to improve on all of these things. We just take it for granted that women have to do this work, but I'm sure it is changing. We can see the change at our homes that it has been happening. So special thanks to both of you all for sparing your time in your busy schedule to come forward and participate in this session. I will be failing in my duty if I don't express my gratitude to Arva, because she was actually the spine of this entire thing. She ensured that we had to do it, and for seamlessly moderating this session. Thank you, Arva, for this. But one most important person whom I have to mention is Ms. Subhashini. She was immediately said we will try and get Ms. Pooja Kulkarni, and she immediately did it. So I have to thank Ms. Subhashini also for this. Of course, I have to thank the MCCA Secretariat for the support that they have rendered to us. And of course, all the participants here. In fact, there are a lot of questions in the chat box. Because we are running out of time, we are unable to take all of these things, but we will support you in a different manner in all these things. I would like to once again thank all of you all present here for this wonderful session and making it a grand success. We have around 60-70 people in the session itself, and we have few members on the YouTube as well. So it is a grand success is what we will say. And thank you all for this wonderful session. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Subhashini, for all the help.
Thank you. Thank you